It started innocently enough with a letter from the HOA, but soon it turned into a nightmare. The letter accused me of violating several of their petty rules I had never even been made aware of. The claims ranged from the color of my front door to the height of my mailbox. Each infraction came with an astronomical fine, and in the last line of the letter, they threatened to begin foreclosure proceedings if I didn't comply within 30 days. I was confused at first. The house wasn't perfect, but it certainly wasn't in violation of any reasonable community standards. I figured it was some mistake, but as I tried to call the HOA office, I was met with cold, bureaucratic indifference. The woman on the phone barely acknowledged my questions. She told me it was out of her hands and that the board had made its decision. That's when I knew something wasn't right. The HOA had become a tyrannical force in our community. Over the years, they'd gotten more and more aggressive with their fines and restrictions. They claimed to uphold community standards, but in reality, they were simply controlling people's lives with unnecessary regulations. It was clear to me now they weren't just fining me. They were using their power to strip me of my home. Determined to fight back, I called my lawyer, who confirmed my suspicions. The HOA had no right to foreclose on my property for these infractions. They were stepping well beyond their authority. But it wasn't just about the law. It was about standing up to this abuse of power. This was personal. I wasn't about to let them take my home without a fight.
Over the next week, I carefully reviewed every rule, every guideline, every email from the HOA I could find. I talked to my neighbors, and it turned out I wasn't alone. Several of them had faced similar threats and fines, some for ridiculous things like the wrong color of flowers or an overgrown bush. The HOA had turned into a monster, using petty complaints to squeeze money out of homeowners who were just trying to live their lives. I didn't hesitate. I filed a formal complaint with the state's HOA Oversight Division challenging their actions, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. I needed evidence. I began documenting everything, every threatening letter, every fine, every encounter with the HOA. I knew they were abusing their power, and I was determined to expose them. It wasn't long before I realized that the HOA wasn't acting alone. The two enforcers who came to my door, intimidating men dressed in dark suits, claiming to be official enforcers of the HOA, had no legitimate authority to be there. They showed up at my house uninvited, demanding access to inspect my property. When I refused to let them on my land, they became aggressive. I stood my ground. "This is my property," I told them, voice firm. "You can't just walk onto my lawn because you say so." One of them tried to argue, but I wasn't having it. I stepped back, my Navy SEAL instincts kicking in. I knew exactly how to handle this. I called the police, and within minutes, the men were forced to leave. But the HOA wasn't done yet. They escalated their actions, sending a certified letter that threatened to seize my property if I didn't pay the fines within the week. The letter was a bluff, at least I hoped it was. But the threat of losing everything made my blood run cold. I couldn't let them win. I had to do something more. I reached out to more neighbors, gathering support and sharing my research. We began to push back together, filing complaints and gathering evidence of the HOA's overreach. I worked with my lawyer to prepare a case not just against the fines, but against the entire HOA for harassment, fraud, and abuse of power. We weren't just fighting for my home anymore. We were fighting for the entire community. The next phase was critical. I organized a meeting with all the affected residents. The room was packed with people who had been living in fear of the HOA for years. It wasn't just about the fines anymore. It was about the way the HOA was bullying the community into submission. We made a pact. We would stand together, united. With the evidence I had collected, I filed a lawsuit against the HOA for harassment, fraud, and unlawful actions. I wasn't looking for a quick settlement. I wanted to make sure they paid for their abuse, and that's exactly what happened. The case went to court, and the HOA was forced to stop its illegal actions. They had to pay damages to the residents they had targeted. It was a huge win, not just for me, but for everyone who had been under the thumb of that corrupt HOA. In the end, the HOA was dissolved. Sarah Miller, the head of the HOA, was removed from her position and banned from holding any future HOA leadership roles. The community was finally free from their overbearing control. We formed a new voluntary neighborhood association, one that wasn't focused on fines and punishment, but on helping each other and maintaining the neighborhood. The victory didn't come without a price, but it was worth it. I had defended my home, my family, and my community. The experience taught me that sometimes the best way to fight corruption is not through violence or anger, but through determination, unity, and the will to stand up for what's right. Now I look at my house and my family with pride. We didn't just survive the HOA, we beat them at their own game. And that's a lesson I'll carry with me forever.
What do you think of the Navy SEAL dad taking a stand against the HOA? Did he handle it right, or was there a better way? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more intense stories. Thanks for watching.